Yep. Um, so yeah, to encourage drivers to turn off their engines. So it needs to be that infinitive to turn off, because in order to do this, um, like yeah, so you're encouraging them to do something. That's
So,
right.
okay,
Yeah,
guys,
so
actually,
that's the verb form that works best there. Um, you could encourage someone um in a different, maybe slightly different context. Uh, but yeah, it's usually encourage someone to do something. So some further verb, and it has to be in that infinitive form. Mm. Yeah, so it's because it's about quantity. Uh, between 2 and 3 minutes is it's a rough quantity, but on average, we think we're talking about quantity based on that. Mm, mm. So, I guess if it were minority, it would be a minority of drivers to switch off their engines rather than the majority, because um, I guess it's about significance. Um, so yeah, you could say a majority as well, but the majority. Yeah, the choice of article here is, for me, is signaling that this is the majority. So the majority of a group of drivers that have already been studied, um, but it would be a minority because there's more than one of those within a group. So if it were going to be minority, it couldn't be the minority because there has to be more than one. If it's less than Mm. No, because it's not going to be, if something is a in the minority, then it there could in principle be a number of minorities. Um, Mm. Yeah, a minority of students have had this particular challenge. And then it's kind of inviting you to then be more specific. A small minority of students, or um, then you could elaborate on which particular group were having that problem. So it's kind of inviting you to focus in on that small chunk and tell us more about it, which is why the indefinite article, a minority is always indefinite until it's given definition, whereas the majority, if you've got a population, the majority um could be definite because it's just the larger than half. Yeah. Yeah, we could.
here. So we cannot say the minority, that's it. But we can use the rest. The minority, the majority, m a majority. Okay, great.
Yeah, you could talk about this minority
This
once you've
minority.
established what it is, and then
Yeah,
you could use a demonstrative.
yeah.
Um, yeah, I think that's the problem. That's why, and I guess in the context here, they're talking about this being a big problem, right? So even though the drivers had to wait for like 2 or 3 minutes, most of them don't turn off their engines. Yeah.
Yeah. So and here
Mm.
the answer is obvious again.
So yeah, so in this case, that what they're doing is they're setting up what's called a concessional structure. Although this, actually that, and they want to land on that. That's the significant point. So although some research suggests that signs alone can change behavior, the message on this sign was designed simply to be an informational request and was not guided by any particular behavioral theory.
Okay, if someone asks you here, how can we change this one to since? Can we or not? It's impossible.
Okay, yes. So in this case, we'd need a different following clause. So since some research suggests that signs alone can change behavior, we built a sign here.
Oh, okay.
Like, but it would be about we did that for that reason.
What about because? Can we say instead of the same
Yeah,
thing for because?
because some research suggests this, we did this.
What about does? Can we say does, comma, some researchers suggest that signs alone or no?
In that case, the thus would have to come after this clause. Some research suggests that signs can change behavior. Full
Does,
stop. Thus, comma, the message
okay.
on this sign was designed to do this particular thing. We'd still need to be saying something different though, because although it sets up a contrast rather than these other logical relationships.
The
Yeah, I
problem,
think because thus can be about the manner or the way that something is done, or it can be on something that is a further effect of something else.
okay,
So, or a consequence of it.
if
But
someone,
it's not about reasons or claims.
if someone asks you to give one simple example about does, what is the first thing that comes to your mind?
Um,
Since I study well, does since I wanted to get a degree, does I need to study more?
I could say something like, I spent too much time at the cafe, thus preventing me from studying effectively that day.
So you put a full stop before does or not?
No. I could also say I spent too much time at the cafe talking to my friends.
And
Full
comma,
stop.
a full stop,
Full stop. Thus,
comma.
comma, I was unable to make it to the meeting in time.
So without comma, I got it. The second one, you put one full stop and then does that comma. So can
Yeah,
you
but
give us
in the
another example?
first example, there's no commas. It's just a flow-on effect.
So two
I think.
comma between
So
does.
no, there wouldn't be any. So
Okay.
I I was stuck in a meeting and unable to attend um, the town hall. Thus, I missed that key piece of information.
No
So as a
comma in
consequence,
okay.
yeah, and I don't think thus missing that information,
Mhm.
or comma, thus I missed that key piece of information. If
Mhm.
it's a full clause after it, I think you would use the comma. If
Mhm.
not, I think if it's a dependent clause, then you don't need a comma. So it can
Wow.
kind of come in the middle of a sentence without any commas involved if what comes after it is like a consequence, a further consequence, and if what comes after it is not a full clause with a subject.
I could this one, yeah, without
And
any
thus,
com.
yeah.
Okay, I got
So
it.
as a consequence, and as a consequence, substantial. Um, the real challenge lies with tropical taxa and those with limited dispersal,
And
and
does
and thus and those as a consequence would then have this. So and thus substantial. So if they've got limited dispersal, they therefore have substantial phylogeographic structure.
but I have one rule. I mean, I found one rule. If there is a comma after does, it should be at the beginning of a sentence after full stop.
Yeah, that's right. And it's
Okay,
about the relationship between the previous sentence and that sentence then.
perfect,
Yeah.
amazing.